James. I'm at a conference in Paris. It's really exciting. It's awesome. Check it out. This is one of the side panels. It's about globalisation and media. It's awesome. We're in Paris. Check it. We're in Paris. Check it. Check it out. The Eiffel Tower. So welcome to this week's edition of James TV. For those of you who haven't seen James TV before, we're in Paris for the first time. It's about introducing to sociology, cultural studies, anything like that you study. It's a great summary of the lectures I give for my students at the University of Western Sydney, but other people seem to use them as well, which is this week's episode. We're going to be talking about globalisation. What is globalisation, where it comes from and all that type of thing. And as you can see, it's going to be a complex process, and I want to be talking to some people and stuff like that. I'm in Paris for a conference. I'm really excited to be here, and it's an awesome place. If you can get here, get here. Check it out, check it out. I'm in Paris, awesome. Woo! Okay, let's talk about it. So let's begin. What is globalisation? Hi Liv, what is globalisation?
The compression of space and time. Yeah.
Well, obviously it's here. I mean, I'm standing in Paris with a Swede and a Russian living in Sweden talking.
Globalization.
Yes, what is globalization?
Yes. Well, it's hard to define. There is good things and bad things about globalization. The bad things are the consequences like environment, like community laws, like bondage laws. The good thing, and that's what I like to think about, is that you can go everywhere and it's much more easy to be a citizen of the world, as Socrates said.
Fantastic.
So, okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
So the thing you get from those interviews and those people, which are all lovely folk by the way, is that globalisation is a complex process. And the definition I like to use is by a guy called David Held, and Held talks about globalisation as a complex multidimensional process. It includes the deepening and the lengthening of relationships. Let me explain that. More and more economies and communities and societies are coming together, getting closer and closer together. That means you've got a strengthening of the relationships. Now, sometimes, this comes across all different aspects of society. So it works, for example, when we're talking about religion, economics, cultures, the sharing of cultural ideas, such as movies and music and that type of thing, but also in ways like criminal networks, family networks, all those types of things. And globalisation is that these things are coming together in all sorts of different ways. Importantly, we are part of the globalisation process. We help shape it. It shapes us and we shape it. And that's a really important thing. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody can shape it equally. For example, if you're a rich multi-billionaire and you can send lots of products all over the world and things like that, then you can obviously shape it more than, say, the average person who might not have those resources. But our decisions politically, socially, economically, what we buy, what we support, and all those type of things also help shape globalisation. So that's the second thing. Globalisation is not something that happens over there or over here or in Paris, woo, check it out, but it's actually something that happens all the time around you, and you're part of that process. So the thing about globalisation is it's actually a compression of time and space. What's that mean, a compression of time and space? Well, first of all, let's think about time. In 20, 30 years ago, before the internet existed, if you wanted to contact someone, you had to write them a letter. And so if you wrote them a letter, you would have to put it on a plane, it would go on a plane, and it would take like 2 or 3 days to get there. But 100 years ago, if you wrote a letter, it had to get there by ship. So it could take months to send a letter from London to New York. Now, you have internet, instant text messaging, you have Facebook, so you can let everybody know instantaneously what you're doing. So that is the compression of time. This is really embarrassing. Okay, so there's a compression of space. The idea of compression of space is this, is like if you're living in Greece, like when my parents were in the 1960s, and you want to get from Greece to Sydney, you have to catch a boat. It take months and months. In fact, my mum says it took her 3 months to get from Athens to Sydney, unless you were really, really rich and you could afford to fly. But 100 years ago, imagine that, there was not even an option of a plane. Now, anywhere in the world you can get to within just jump on a plane and be there within 24 hours. Look at this, I'm in Paris, and today I'm living in Paris, and tomorrow I'm in Sydney. How awesome is that? Okay, so here I am in the Sorbonne. It's like the oldest university in Paris. I don't know if that's true, I just made that part up, but it's really beautiful here. Anyway, so we're here for the conference, and the stuff we're talking about, globalisation and culture and stuff like that. So I just want to bring you here and show you a little bit of the Sorbonne. And so this is where the Grand Plaza is, and this is where I'm going now to go into the Grand Plaza to hear the final keynote of the conference, which is about globalisation and stuff like that. But what's really interesting so far in what we've heard is that globalisation is a complex process, and that's important. Never think of globalization as something that starts and ends, because it's always happening. It's happening in lots of complex ways, in lots of different ways. It's happening around us, it happens with food, it happens with music, it happens with all sorts of culture, it happens with people. Here we are in Paris. Look at this, check it out. Lots of people. There. Go. So this is one of the things about being in Paris. This is Miffy. Say hi to Miffy. Pretty cool, huh? Anyway, so this is one of the things about being here in Paris and talking about globalization. French, the centre of French culture, and French culture has been one of those things that's developed and spread across the world in all sorts of different ways. Originally, it spread through issues like, say, through colonialism, so through forced globalization, but also we see French culture such as films and movies and things like that slowly spreading across. This is kind of an extension. It's not the same thing, but it's very much related. And so we see globalization in a way that we see many processes happening simultaneously. So we see Miffy. Look, Miffy. I found Miffy, which is actually I think it's a Japanese character here in. People are taking photos of me. How cool is that? I'm famous in France. So the thing about being people are concentrating. So the other thing about being in France and talking about globalization is really interesting, because in some ways globalizations can compete. Like the French version of globalization is often seen as being in conflict with the American version of globalizations. So you have two globalizations coming together and actually competing for influence. Now, it's obviously that American culture is broader and stronger and more influential than French culture at the moment, but French culture continues. And one of the ways that French culture continues is because it funds cultural events like this one. And so it funds learning French and things like that. And the French government just continue to try and promote French culture. And this is a form of globalization, isn't it?
Probably.
She agrees. See? I'm smart. I know these things. And so what you also have is different nations also influencing globalization. So you have the emergence of China and India as important global powers. So what you're getting here is you're getting like we have our local communities, say like in Australia, our local area, say like in Parramatta or Penrith or in where I live in Randwick or Coogee, and you bring this together, right? And you have these specific local communities coming together. And then you have these multiple global communities forming and interacting, right? So we have these processes of interacting, right? So they're all interacting. And this is globalization, these multiple processes. And we should think of globalization as happening culturally, we can think about it happening politically, we can think about it happening economically, we can think about it happening socially, religiously, all these different levels. And the important thing about globalization, it's not only happening in lots of different ways, but at lots of different levels. So it can be deep, that is intense globalization around a certain thing, or it can be light, where you have only light interactions. And this is the amazing thing about studying globalization, is trying to decipher these things and see where it's deep, where it's shallow, where it's in competition, where it's in harmony, and how it's happening. What's important here is that we understand that globalization is imbued with power. That is, the power relationships in the world actually shape the experiences of globalization that you have. So globalization is one of those things that is really interconnected with not only technology but power. So power and technology help shape the form that globalization takes. Now what's important, the final thing I want to say about globalization is that globalization is a socially constructed process. That is, the shape and direction that globalization takes is not actually something that's natural or normal or innate. It's actually a byproduct of the power and the decisions that humans make. So we make decisions to form the shape that globalization takes. And this is what I meant about we being part of the globalization process. It's not something that happens here, just in Paris, or in Tokyo, or in New York, or anything like that, or in the decision boards of Sydney, but it happens all over the place, and you're part of it. That's awesome. So what are you going to do about it? Good things. Yeah! So, the last thing I want to say about globalization is this. So the decision we make helps shape it. For example, if we don't care about the world and we decide we want to pollute it, pollution begins somewhere and ends up somewhere in the world, and usually the most vulnerable of it. So we should always think about the consequences of our action. For example, if you buy fair trade coffee, you actually can have a positive influence in people's lives. So what I want to do is on the video, I'm going to put a link to some fair trade coffee organisations in Australia, or at least one, where you can actually click onto and find out more information. And if you do that, then you can make globalisation a more just and fair process. That is, even those who don't have the power or the resources to take full advantage of globalisation, we can undertake action to actually help them share in the wealth and not just keep it all for ourselves. Okay, that's it from me. I'll see you in Sydney.